street after street of nice houses, great schools, good parks, a big public swimming pool, and almost all white. She was easy to underestimate with her soft manner, and she reminded me all over again of the truth of that old saying, you should never judge a book by its covers. To visit one of those segregated academies that then enrolled over 500,000 white kids in the South. Only way the economics worked is that they claimed federal tax exemptions to which they were not legally entitled. She got sent to prove they weren't. So she sauntered into one of these academies all by herself, pretending to be a housewife that had just moved to town and needed to find a school for her son. And they exchanged pleasantries, and finally she said, look, let's just get to the bottom line here. If I enroll my son in this school, will he be in a segregated school, yes or no? And the guy said, absolutely. She had him. I've seen it 1,000 times since. And she went back, and her encounter was part of a report that gave Marion Wright Edelman the ammunition she needed to keep working to force the Nixon administration to take those tax exemptions away and give our kids access to an equal education. The wonderful union leader Franklin Garcia, and he helped her register Mexican-American voters. I think some of them are still around to vote for her in 2016. She went to South Carolina to see why so many young African-American boys, I mean young teenagers, were being jailed for years with adults in men's prisons. And she filed a report on that, which led to some changes too. I first proposed to her on a trip to Great Britain, the first time she'd ever been overseas, and we were on the shoreline of this wonderful little lake, Lake Innerdale. I asked her to marry me, and she said, I can't do it. Once more, she filed a report about these kids, and that helped influence, ultimately, the Congress to adopt the proposition that children with disabilities, physical or otherwise, should have equal access to public education. You saw the results of that last night when Anastasia Somoza talked. She never made fun of people with disabilities. She tried to empower them based on their abilities. And I meant it. It was true. I said, I know most of the young Democrats our age who want to go into politics. They mean well and they speak well, but none of them is as good as you are at actually doing things to make positive changes in people's lives. And she decided to take a huge chance. She moved to a strange place, more rural, more culturally conservative than any place she'd ever been, where she knew good and well people would wonder what in the world she was like and whether they could or should accept her. She loved her teaching, and she got frustrated when one of her students said, well, what do you expect? I'm just from Arkansas. She said, don't tell me that. You're as smart as anybody. You just got to believe in yourself and work for it and set high goals. She believed that anybody could make it. Hillary commented on what a uniquely designed and beautiful house it was. So I took a big chance. I bought the house. My mortgage was $175 a month. They recommended to do that partly by deploying trained nurse practitioners in places with no doctors to provide primary care they were trained to provide. It was a big deal then, highly controversial and very important. And I got the feeling that what she did for the rest of her life, she was doing there. She just went out and figured out what needed to be done and what made the most sense and what would help the most people. And then if it was controversial, she just tried to persuade people it was the right thing to do. She came up with really ambitious recommendations. For example, that we be the first school in America, first state in America to require elementary counselors in every school because so many kids were having trouble at home and they needed it. The idea was to teach low-income parents, even those that couldn't read, to be their children's first teachers. She said she thought it would work in Arkansas. I said, that's great. What are we going to do about it? She said, oh, I already did. I called the woman who started the program in Israel. She'll be here in about 10 days and help us get started. Next thing you know, I'm being dragged around to all these little preschool graduations. But keep in mind, this was before any state even had universal kindergarten. And I'm being dragged to preschool graduations, watching these poor parents with tears in their eyes because they never thought they'd be able to help their kids learn. There are a lot of young adults in America who have no idea Hillary had anything to do with it, who are enjoying better lives because they were in that program. This is a really important point for you to take out of this convention. If you believe in making change from the bottom up, if you believe the measure of change is how many people's lives are better, you know it's hard and some people think it's boring. Speeches like this are fun. Actually doing the work is hard. So people say, well, we need to change. She's been around a long time. She sure has. And she's sure been worth every single year she's put into making people's lives better. If you were sitting where I'm sitting, and you heard what I have heard at every dinner conversation, every lunch conversation, on every long walk, you would say, this woman has never been satisfied with the status quo in anything. She always wants to move the ball forward. That is just who she is. There are a lot of other things in that bill that she got done, piece by piece, pushing that rock up the hill. She also teamed with the House Minority Leader, Tom DeLay, who maybe disliked me more than any of Newt Gingrich's crowd. She wanted to do it because she knew that Tom DeLay, for all of our differences, was an adopted parent, and she honored him for doing that. I'll never forget moving her into her dorm room at Stanford. It would have been a great little reality flick. There I was in a trance, just staring out the window, trying not to cry, and there was Hillary on her hands and knees, desperately looking for one more drawer to put that liner paper in. Chelsea took charge and told us ever so gently that it was time for us to go. Partly spurred on by what we were going through, she became the first senator in the history of New York ever to serve on the Armed Services Committee. So she tried to make sure people on the battlefield had proper equipment. She tried to expand, and did expand, health care coverage to reservists and members of the National Guard. She got longer family leave working with Senator Dodd for people caring for wounded service members, to propose changes necessary to meet our new security challenges. Newt Gingrich is on that commission. He told me what a good job she'd done. I say that because nobody who has seriously dealt with the men and women in today's military believes they are a disaster. They are a national treasure of all races, all religions, all walks of life. She became the de facto economic development officer for the area of New York outside the ambit of New York City. She worked for farmers, for winemakers, something we have to do again in small town and rural America, in neighborhoods that have been left behind in our cities, in Indian country, and yes, in coal country. And as she had been doing since she went to Beijing in 1995 and said women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights, she worked to empower women and girls around the world and to make the same exact declaration on behalf of the LGBT community in America and around the world. And it didn't cost you any more money. She just bought available, FDA-approved generic drugs, something we need to do for the American people more. How does this square with the things that you heard at the Republican convention? What's the difference in what I told you and what they said? How do you square it? You can't. She'll never quit on you. She sent me in this primary to West Virginia, where she knew we were going to lose, to look those coal miners in the eye and say, I'm down here because Hillary sent me to tell you that if you really think you can get the economy back you had 50 years ago, have at it, go wherever you want to. But if she wins, she is coming back for you to take you along on the ride to America's future. If you love this country, you're working hard, you're paying taxes, and you're obeying the law, and you'd like to become a citizen, you should choose immigration reform over somebody that wants to send you back. If you're a Muslim and you love America and freedom and you hate terror, stay here and help us win and make the future together. We want you. If you're a young African American disillusioned and afraid, we saw in Dallas how great our police officers can be. Help us build a future where nobody's afraid to walk outside, including the people that wear blue to protect our future. You know it because you spent a lifetime doing it. I hope you'll do it. I hope you'll elect her. Those of us who have more yesterdays than tomorrows tend to care more about our children and grandchildren. The reason you should elect her is that in the greatest country on earth, we have always been about tomorrow. Your children and grandchildren will bless you forever if you do. God bless you. Thank you.